What happens when people are silent for too long? Don't forget, they don't forgive. And one day, they don't stay quiet anymore. Welcome back. In episode 3, we talk about power, control, silence, and how for over 100 years, Liberia was controlled by a small elite group while the majority remained excluded. But today, we talk about what happens when silence breaks. It is April 12th, 1980, a date that changed Liberia forever. In the early hours of morning, a group of enlisted soldiers led by a young master sergeant named samueldoe entered the executive mansion. Within hours, President Waylon Aratobo Jr. was dead. Just like that, over 100 years of Americo-Liberian rule came to an end on April 12th. For many Liberians, especially indigenous Liberians, this moment felt like a justice. Finally, power has changed hands. Finally, the system has been broken. Finally, the people who have been excluded were now in control. People celebrated, they danced, they believed something new had begun. But here is the truth we must face. Not every revolution leads to peace. Soon after the coup, 13 top government officials were executed publicly on the beach in front of the nation. This was not just a punishment. This was a message of anger, a message of revenge, a message that say the old system is gone. But let's step back and ask the real question: was this just about power, or was this something deeper? This was not just a political coup. This was a release of a generational frustration. For over centuries, people felt excluded. People felt unhealed. People felt left behind. And when frustration builds over generations, it does not come out gently. It exploded. This is what happened in 1980. The silence we talk about in episode 3 turned into action. But here's where the things become complicated. Because removing a system is not the same as replacing it with something better. samueldoe became the leader, the president of Liberia. For the first time in Liberia's history, an indigenous Liberian was in power. And at first, there was hope. But that hope did not last because the system itself was still weak. Institutions were not strong. Government structures were not stable. Trust between groups was already damaged, it was fragile. So instead of unity, new problems begin to appear. Tribal divisions increased a lot. A political favoritism emerged. Power struggle intensified. And slowly, the same patterns begin to repeat to the people. This is one of the hardest truths in our history, in Liberia history. When a broken system is not rebuilt properly, it produces the same problems, just with the different people. So the questions becomes, was the coup a solution, Or was it the beginning of something worse? Because real change is not just about who is in power, it is about how power is used. And in this case, power shifts, but the system remains fragile. Instead of healing the past, the country begins to divide even more. Instead of building trust, suspicions grew in the system. No longer trust. Everyone taking each other as an enemy. Instead of creating stability, the foundation became weaker. And when a country reaches that point, it is no longer just unstable, it becomes vulnerable. Vulnerable to conflict, vulnerable to violence, vulnerable to collapse. And that is exactly where Liberia was heading. Because 1980 was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of something much bigger. A period where division would turn into war. A period where identity will become a weapon. A period where a country could face its darkest years. But to understand that, we have to understand one thing clearly. The 1980 coup was not just about overthrowing a government. It was about releasing pain that had been building for generations and generations. And when pain is released without direction, it does not create peace. It creates chaos. Because when silence finally breaks, it does not whisper, it shouts. And thank you, viewer. Another episode will be out in the next 24 hours for the next story of this. Thank you for watching.